Good afternoon, everyone. It's Monday, February 10th, 2025. We are here this afternoon for a work session with Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources. I'm Kristen Stevens, Larimer County Commissioner. With me are my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally and Commissioner John Kapfalis. We also have our County Manager, Lorinda Volker, with us this afternoon. Several people out in the audience, but I will turn it over to our Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources Director, Leslie Ellis, to kick us off for this afternoon's work session. So welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction. I will quickly hand it off to Dalen Figgs here from Natural Resources. His two items are the first ones on the agenda today. Frank Haug has a brief update that he'll provide under item 3, right before I provide some other updates. So that's really our agenda for today. So I'll hand it off to you, Dalen. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Dalen Figgs, Director for Larimer County's Department of Natural Resources. And this afternoon, I want to go over the annual work plans. I know on the agenda it's for the Parks Advisory Board and the Open Lands Advisory Board. I went ahead and added the Land Stewardship Board as well. We can go over that. It's not been presented to the board, but I think is fairly complete. And one thing I want to recognize right out of the gate is that this is pre-decision of combining the Open Lands and Parks Advisory Board meeting. I know that was a discussion the commissioners had and it was passed to me after this had been done. So, I think the topics we'll talk about today as part of our work plan are still accurate. How we do that from a combined board meeting is yet to be determined. I'm happy to share my thoughts on how we want to go about doing that, but I think what I'll need to do, if you're in agreement, is to go back to our senior leadership within DNR and come up with a kind of a plan of how we want to do the joint board meetings and come back with maybe a follow-up work plan and logistics and things of that nature about how we see moving forward. And then that way we're all on the same page when we kick it off. So with that in mind, I'll start with the Open Lands Advisory Board. I won't go through it line by line, but certainly feel free to ask questions at any point in time on the lines themselves. This is kind of the standard work plan that we have for the year. We go through annual reports. We do a lot of work plan review. Obviously, for this board, we do that also with some of our work teams if there's questions around what we'll be doing this year. We spend a lot of time talking about grants and partnerships, especially in the land acquisition category. We have done our capital project overview for the year without consideration around federal grants, so we'll probably continue to need to touch back on some of our capital projects. We're heavily dependent on grants and federal grants, and so we'll need to continue to do that. We always visit with our board about our land acquisition strategy and the front loading of acquisition dollars within our open space sales tax and kind of how we use those funds. It's always important to sort of reset the board on expectations around that. We do want to continue talking, we do every year, around our financial model. We look at our budget on an annual basis and then typically at a 3 to 5 year and then a 5+ year time frame to give really a good holistic view of how we're handling our finances and then some of the challenges, some of which I've shared with you in past discussions. Won't really go into solutions quite yet because I know we haven't had that conversation as a Board of County Commissioners and the department. But I do want to share really around financial stewardship and the importance of that to the department. And our annual compliance training we're going to do at our next round of board meetings, sharing the presentation I know Laura Cadrich put together along with some other information. Our second quarter, we continue to move in. One of the continuing conversations is an ecological adaptive management approach. We began really building that, really almost a policy and approach into how we manage lands, especially of our agricultural lands. And we want to spend some time really speaking to how that's working out for us and where it's been effective. The other piece of that is, if you remember, in a lot of our surveys, Our Lands, Our Future being one of them, the statistically valid survey across the county, we get this direction from our community to balance resource conservation with recreation access. But we've never defined what that means. And so we're working to kind of look back at how we manage our existing properties, because the other thing we hear, people are pretty satisfied with what they have now. And so using what they're satisfied with already as a baseline, and then building that into future planning in ratios of acres to miles of trail, how much of a property should be developed for certain activities, things of that nature to build, I'm going to say, a policy around how we look at future properties and maintain the balance based on those parameters. We're spending some time on that. It's actually been a pretty fun project. We'll do our trails update. Also, this is the year that in our capital improvement plan review, Chimney Hollow kicks off. And so even though the reservoir is still under construction, there's work we have to do this year, namely putting a boat ramp in before the reservoir gets water in it. They're incredibly long concrete strips, and so they can only be fully developed when the reservoir's dry. So we want to take advantage of that this year. We also have some trails that we'll begin building. We haven't got the final design. Typically, that's sort of a design built when our trail crew gets on site. They go out and walk and build and then kind of form fit it in place. So we'll begin that this year. In 26 is when a lot of the capital project really begins, the more meaty build out of parking lots and trailheads and restrooms and boat docks and things of that nature. And in the meantime, we'll be writing grants to cover the cost of some of that work. And so that'll be a fun project this year. We'll, of course, do our board elections, the restoration resource management update. We have this year on the very front end developing two major restoration projects, one at Red Mountain Open Space, the other at River Bluffs. I don't think River Bluffs is going to be in our financial wheelhouse for a while. It's a very expensive project, but Red Mountain Open Space, there's a Box Elder Creek component that has been modified pretty heavily for a hayfield and water removed for irrigation. We're working to put the water back into Box Elder Creek and do some riparian restoration up there. We do plan to do that this year. It's a little less expensive, much more doable project within our current budget. So we'll be bringing reports back to our boards around kind of the status of that project and ways to move forward. And we'll also be working on some interesting things around the water portfolio that's up there. We have a water right. It's one of the older water rights in the county that we'll plan and convert to in-stream flow as part of this project and putting it back in the stream more permanently. So we'll do some updates around that. Our fourth quarter is really a wrap-up for the year. A lot of our status reports around monitoring the work we've done for the year. We'll do an update on our regional planning. We'll look at our in-stream flow dedication, kind of where we are at that point in time. There are other streams we may go after this year. And we're also starting this year some discussions around Glade Reservoir and how that will look into the future. Northern has asked us to participate in some of that planning work with them. They're still the lead agency doing this, but they're looking to put out a request for proposals for a design firm to help really flesh out what that recreational component looks like at Glade and continue that conversation. Before we move to the next board, are there any questions on open lands?
Any questions, Commissioner?
I think my questions would apply to all three boards, so I'll wait a little bit there, Madam Chair.
I would just ask, what's the timeline for Glade?
Well, it's my understanding they've made some progress in their lawsuit. They're expecting, I'm recalling this from a discussion at Parks Advisory Board, so my apologies if I don't get it quite right. They're expecting one of the initial judgments from the court to come later this year, which immediately will get challenged, and so they'll go back in. But they're hoping to begin construction as early as 27. And so it may not be as far into the future, but only time tells on these matters. So.
Thank you, Dalen. Yeah, I guess having those conversations, if they're going to start construction, potentially that early is really important. So,
Yes, yeah, I agree. And if you would like, we can bring back, I'm going to say decisions, but sort of challenges, decisions, what obstacles, whatever along the way that we're facing, because we've already ran into a few just initial discussions from when it was very conceptual to where it is now. Nothing terrible, but I do want to make sure that we keep you in the loop as we go through, because there may be some changes.
That'd be great. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, related to that, the idea of updates, is there any update on the relocation of Highway 287? Isn't that supposed to happen first?
It is, and I do not have an update on that, but I can certainly add that into our first update on Glade.
And that may be more from our engineering transportation folks, but at some point it would be good to have that kind of an update.
Yeah, one of the big changes on the recreation piece I can update now on is there was a concept of what we called the east side river or reservoir access, and it was a boat ramp on the east side. On the west side was really to be built out for more hand launch craft. Just from a constructability standpoint, it's not feasible to put a road to that side of the reservoir would be far more expensive than it would be wise to spend. And so we're working around that a little bit. We'll still have hand launch craft. We'll still have some separation of use. It just won't be as clean as we were hoping it would be when we had that initial look at the reservoir. So that's one challenge that we came up early on.
Dalen, if I could just jump in. Leslie Ellis, we have CDOT joining us on the 24th to talk about the US 287 Safety Action Plan. So I think that would also be a great time we'll connect with them and see if they can provide an update on that part of the project as well.
Yeah, that would be helpful, just because when we had talked to them last about it, which has been a while, we had, we were talking about the idea of let's build something better into the plan. Let's not just build for what we have. Let's build safety improvements and other improvements. If you're, paying to rebuild the road, you always, bring it back better than it was. And knowing that there are already safety concerns along that corridor, not as much in that particular area, but certainly with maybe more traffic because of recreational area, that, all bets are off. So I just think that, is it in line with the, some of the things that have already been identified on 287 as being issues? So that would be a great, you said the 24th, is that when they'll be here? Okay, we'll look forward to that conversation then. Thanks.
All right, well, next up is our Parks Advisory Board. Again, I'll just kind of hit through the highlights. We did renew our contract with Carter Lake Sail Club at, obviously, Carter Lake. So they are a continued presence on the reservoir. One of the bigger projects we began last year is really a text to park program, trying to get away from some of our pay stations. And we've talked a little bit about this. We'll continue to do that work. We are now sort of exploring Skylink internet connectivity to get better hotspots in areas that lack cell coverage. And so our Park to Pay or Text to Park program will work much better with that in place. So really continuing to lean into technology. Our Parks Advisory Board has been with us along that journey and have provided good advice along the way. Some of the big projects we had going at the Reservoir Parks this year are Federal Lands Access Program, big federal projects on hold, about $11 million worth. Tied to that was the project that you, as board, helped fund through ARPA funds, the Carter Side East, the East Carter Improvement Project, because they were really sharing some of the infrastructure. We had timed them up to where they would happen at the same time. We're going to likely pause the East Side Carter project for now till we better understand what's going on with the federal work. So that's a little bit in flux. Hopefully we've learned more as in the very near future. Our Parks Advisory Board will be pulled further into the Chimney Hollow plan as we go through the first half of the year. It is an open space, so really the planning process has been under the purview of the open lands with some input from parks. We'll probably go into parks more because of the reservoir access. It's going to be an interesting kind of hybrid property, one we've not had in the past, where it's open space but with a very active reservoir park, which is more in line with the Parks Advisory Board. So we'll continue to work with, obviously, both boards in that case. A lot of these really begin, obviously, kind of why we're combining the joint board meetings. Much of this overlaps with the Open Lands Advisory Board. We will be doing regulation updates this year. We try to do those every 2 or 3 years, so this will be a year we'll have some regulation updates. I think we're going to try to do a lot of cleanup this year. We have a few regulations that may be outdated, some we could combine, and some we may look at really because of Chimney Hollow, because it will be kind of a different property. We're going to manage recreation on the water in slightly different ways because of the no-wake component of the reservoir. And again, Parks Advisory Board will be involved in the Glade recreation design in that process. It'll be much like Chimney Hollow, a bit of a hybrid property for us. And everything else should really remain pretty much as I've described in the open lands, with the one exception, I guess, would be the Aquatic Nuisance Species Program update and kind of our numbers for the year on that. Okay. And then I will move to our land stewardship program, which is the shortest work plan. We start the first of the year looking back at the previous year, in this case with our weed compliance and our early detection rapid response review. And if you recall, that is for noxious weeds that are found in just a few locations that have we try to eradicate before they get a foothold. We have a grant that we operate under pretty much every year. Hires a group of folks that go out and scour the county and look for really just a very short list of noxious weeds. They're really good at it. And so we really work to eliminate those plants before they do establish. We did add our contracts into the federal concern bucket because we have about $150,000 a year we work on the fire scars through the Forest Service. It's not a grant, it's a contract. I'm not sure it's going to fall in the same category, but it's kind of on our be concerned list. And so we're hoping to get some clarity around that. And if so, there will be some updates around that work as well. It's important for the recovery of the forest, and hopefully those funds continue to come through. And pretty much everything else with the stewardship board is kind of business as usual. We work a lot with the stewardship board on restoration work. So a lot of the projects we've talked about with OLAB, Open Lands Advisory Board on restoration, we'll also discuss with the Land Stewardship Board. And with that, I believe that's a general summary for that board as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dalen. Any questions? Commissioner, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Dalen, Leslie, everyone. A couple of questions come to mind. One is, do you ever have conversations with the boards and regarding their expectations of the commissioner liaisons? And related to that, you know, their ideas on how our participation and involvement might add value to the discussions? That's one question.
As far as the first part of it, I have not. I've not asked that question directly. I'm trying to recall conversations I've had with boards over the course of a few years, if it's come up. And I don't really recall a time where it's come up where there was a suggested change or an approach. I think the presence is always valued. I think the updates that the commissioner, at you and Commissioner Shattuck McNally provide to our boards is always very welcome. But I don't know if there's a suggested change in that approach. I'm happy to talk to the boards about that if you'd like, but I have not to date.
I appreciate that, and I suppose for your consideration, pros and cons perhaps, maybe in the first quarter, it might be an appropriate discussion. You know, what are the expectations of commissioners? We'd have to maybe step aside from that conversation and specific ideas on, you know, how we can continue to add value besides updates or this or that. And everything might just be fine. So
Okay.
that's one question. Well, I forgot my other ones. What about, oh, yes. A second question, how do you interact with outside groups, for example, and do they interact at all, or should they be interacting at all with members of boards and commissions, recognizing that they advise us and all of that? But For example, recently, Commissioner Shattuck McNally and I attended the Mountain Bike Association gathering, and they were all excited about the Chimney Hollow Reservoir and the recreation area, and I'm sure Glade Reservoir and all of that, and also the trail connector. I forget what it's called. And I didn't realize that would allow for mountain bikes. Yeah. So I guess my question is, how do you get that input? Is that to staff? Is it through the surveys? And should there be, or is there an opportunity to interact with board members, and maybe not?
Yeah, the best way for us to get input is through our planning processes. So when we have, for example, Chimney Hollow open space management plan development, we invited the same bike group, Overland Trail, to participate on our technical advisory group, and then to inform their members that the planning process is underway and provide comment. And that way, it's really done in that public setting where it's all held together. And we do the same with all our other kind of interest group. There's an equestrian group that often participates. There's some trail users. That's how we prefer to do it. And that way, it's through the public process.
And one final question, and it's not specifically pertaining to the boards and commissions, the boards, these three boards, but I'm curious if you can provide us a bit of an update on how the lottery is going for the boat parking spaces or the marina slips and moorings and all of that. Isn't that underway, or did that?
It
Can you
is.
speak to that a tiny bit?
Yeah, this will be our second year. The first year went very well. So where we are in the process this year, and I won't remember the dates, but there is a date that is a little bit into the future where the marinas let us know the number of slips they have available. So there's a process they go through right now, making sure their existing customers renew their annual lease. We've opened up the lottery already for anyone who wants to enter it. So we have pushed out notice through various channels that the lottery is open. We've received several names of individuals looking for a slip. And so once the number of slips become available, we'll do our lottery drawing and begin to notify folks. We're a few weeks away from that notice period. Probably, I want to say it's around the 1st of March, but I may be wrong with that. But it's coming up soon, and we'll wrap that up and move into our second year of the lottery.
Thank you for answering my question.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dalen. I don't think I have any more questions at this time, but I appreciate, knowing what the boards are working on. Certainly a lot of work to be done, and some really exciting work on the box elder and some of that work. So really great to hear about some of that good work that's happening. And you have a lot, there's a lot on the plates of these boards, and then there's a lot upcoming with new spaces being opened and contemplated being opened. So we'll keep them busy. With maybe I'll just ask, sort of, with the thoughts about combining boards, do you feel like that is doable? Is that workable? And I don't think it's because they're not doing great work on their own, but there is some sort of crossover, obviously, in some of the work, and then as we want to lessen the burden of staff who has to support that work, do you feel like that makes sense, and there's space to be able to do that?
Absolutely, and not only does it make sense, I'm really looking forward to it, because I think it will really deepen and enrichen our conversations around the challenges we have, the properties we manage. So I think it's a great opportunity to bring that conversation to both boards at the same time and really bounce ideas off each other. So not only doable, I think it's going to be a great outcome.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because I think that, there again, I think that there's numerous reasons for doing it, not just, not just sort of a financial kind of model,
Right.
but really just, maybe doing this same work a little bit more cohesively.
Yeah.
I'll add, if I may, real quick, too. You see how much overlap there is between the work plans. And, as it happens now, Dalen and his team are many times going to 2 meetings to cover the same ground. And so as he's saying too, that there's this opportunity for a richer collaboration around these topics and just less staff time really to have to go to have the same conversation multiple times. So, yeah.
Quick process question.
Yes, please go ahead, Commissioner.
Thanks. So I'm understanding that the commissioners have to approve the work plans. Therefore, what's the next step? Will this be on the consent agenda? How does that work?
Yeah, there's not a proposal to bring these particular work plans forward right now for approval. I believe Lori is working on a process for all the boards. This was really more just so that you could get a glimpse into the future in the natural resources program in particular, and the types of things that they're working on that are eventually going to make their way to you all as a full Board of County Commissioners for input and decisions too. But Lori can tell you more about the approval process for all the boards.
We thought we'd follow this, Lori Cadridge, Assistant County Manager. We thought we'd follow the same process we did last year. So Laura's working on the work plans for all her boards in her service area. Leslie's working on hers. When they both get them done, they're going to come to you during an admin direction meeting and make sure that all the boards are headed in the right direction. If there's any changes, then we'll take those right back to the boards.
So we wouldn't necessarily be, do we have to do some kind of official approval of these work plans?
We haven't in the past.
Okay, thank you for answering the question. Thank you.
And I think, Commissioners, we haven't because to change the work plan in the future would require another vote and an action. So seeking your direction that the boards are acting in alignment with your goals is really what we're looking for, because we know that their work may change between now and December.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that flexibility because we do not know what's around the corner. That's for sure. So I think it's good to stay flexible and maybe not codify anything like that we might want to change later on. So are you comfortable with that, Commissioner?
Yes, I'm quite comfortable. Thank you for checking, Madam
Be
Chair.
comfortable with uncertainty, right? I mean, we're trying to all be flexible. Well, thank you again, Dalen. Really great work. I'm excited to see what we're doing in the future.
Thank you.
So we are on to item 3, the Community Planning Infrastructure and Resources Update, and it sounded
Yes.
like you wanted Frank. Did
I'll
you want
go ahead and
Frank?
start with Frank.
Okay.
Under that umbrella, he's got a brief update on oil and gas rulemaking matters and what's to come on that topic as well. So,
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Frank Haug from the County Attorney's Office. I just had been in some conversations with Matt Sura. As the board may recall, we've been involved in a produced water rulemaking. There's a consortium that's been put together from a bunch of the industry and different people involved. There's a meeting on Friday where they're discussing sort of what is the best position to take. This was supposed to be done by December of last year, but it's kind of gotten extended. So all that to say, there's a lot of details about how much of your produced water you have to recycle, and there's sort of a rubric for trying to increase how much you have to recycle at deadlines coming into the next 20 years or so. There's some just different information about, well, how many trucks do you want, and possibly a trading program where you can trade credits for different things. We're going to have Matt come in and give you a more detailed update in the coming weeks because it's pretty specific information. So if you have questions, I can try to answer them, but really it's just to say we are working on it and we're going to bring you some more detailed information here in the coming weeks. You may recall that you all did approve for him to continue working on this. We are working with Longmont, and so he's representing us and Longmont, but there seems to be some consensus building around what seems to be an appropriate way to do sort of how much percentage of your water you have to recycle and when appropriate deadlines are for upping that percentage. And this sort of, almost like a carbon tax credit, it seems like it's like a produced water tax credit, or not tax credit, but a credit that you can trade for the different companies. And there's some reporting requirements that are also a part of it. I would like to tell you I have a superior knowledge of the details, but I do not, which is why I had emailed Mr. Sura this morning, and our plan is to have him come in, and hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, maybe to talk about that with you all.
And if you have other questions for Matt then too about just what's happening with the topic in general, I'm sure he's following what's happening at the legislature and, state and federally and that sort of thing. So he could probably brief you on those matters as well.
Questions, Commissioner? No? So the produced water comes from the fracking?
Correct.
The fracking, right? And then they would recycle and it would go into the water system and it would have to be yeah.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah, okay.
Again, I don't know the sort of finer technical details of it, but that's my understanding. I know one part of it is trying to consider, the trucking and how you get the water back and forth and the impacts that has, and so.
Yeah, there's probably a lot involved in it but yeah, that'd be great to have that update from him.
And I think that the idea is, because we have this going on, but we have a couple of other sort of irons in the fire also, so to have him come in and just sort of update you all on like a quarterly update sort of what's going on.
I think that would be really helpful. I know the community, we have a lot of community members who are really interested in this topic. And so, to just have a general lay of the land of what's happening in that space would be great. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, we're talking about oil and gas, particularly with the rulemaking around the produced water. So, and Matt Sura would be visiting with us hopefully in the next few weeks to be able to give us some updates. Any other
Yeah,
questions?
Just
Go
some
ahead,
positive
Commissioner.
feedback.
Yes, please.
Maybe you could convey this to Matt, and that is, some time ago I ran into a person who they purchased a home up at Hearthfire, and they were very grateful for all the work we've done with Prospect Energy in addressing the flaring issues. Had we not done that work, they would not have bought the home in that neighborhood because of concerns around the hazards, and so that's I offer that as good feedback.
Absolutely, I can share that with him, and I will do that. And I'll get it scheduled for him to come in and meet with you all.
Perfect, thank you. All right. Leslie, did you have any questions, Commissioner Shattuck McNally?
Not at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you, Frank and Leslie. You
Yeah.
probably have a few updates as well.
I do, actually, since we don't have a meeting next week. I felt like there was a little bit longer list than usual. So first of all, you probably noticed that the director update is not on the agenda for today, and have heard by now that Rebecca will be out on leave for a few months. So we'll be covering her topics. I'm covering as interim for many of the cross-departmental coordination items and working with you all as usual. Eric, Amy, and Jenny in the community development team are stepping up to help with the items that fall under their subject matter areas and team expertise areas to help coordinate those matters. So just let me know if there's anything that you need support on related to that, and we'll keep carrying the ball forward while she's away for the next bit of time. And then let's see if get to my list here of other items. Wanted to update you on the April 22nd tentative date for the Mirasol film scheduling. And I'll coordinate with Melissa, we're working with the Palmer Land Conservancy. Northern Water is also a sponsor, and they're looking to hold an event at the Lincoln Center that would pull together a panel of people that could hit on topics around land use and water, ag land, water preservation, and so on, many of the topics that we covered in the water plan, and use that as a launching point potentially for other events in the region that would be around the water topic. And so I wanted to check back with the board. It's been since about December that we had the conversation about being a sponsor and providing some funding for this, and just make sure that there's still interest in doing that and working with those partners and continuing forward on this. I think nothing's been set in stone yet, but we're taking steps toward finalizing and getting more firm on the plans. So I wanted to check with you on that.
Commissioner Shattuck McNally?
With the addition of other sponsors and helpers, are we still looking at smaller ballparks for that figure, or what does that look like in the Lincoln Center? Would it be a donation of the Lincoln Center from the city of Fort Collins? What is, and I don't know if
Yeah.
that's something we should talk about now, but I'm just
Yes.
wondering,
Good questions, and some of those questions we're asking as well. We don't know about the cost of the Lincoln Center just yet. We're thinking that because it's one event as opposed to multiple events, that the contribution on our part might be a smaller level as well as from the other sponsors. And so we had talked about somewhere in the 5,000 to 10,000 range. It might be closer to the lower end of that potentially. But a lot of those details we'll still continue to work out and figure out exactly who the other sponsors are. They're likely to be, there's some grant funding and some other funding that may help round this all out as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Cavallo's questions?
To your question, yes, I'm still interested in the county serving as a sponsor and having a better understanding of cost sharing and all of that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I am still interested. It feels like Community Foundation. I don't know if they're a partner, but I mean, they have done a lot of the work
Yeah.
in water, and so I'm wondering
They
if
might be another.
and because it's an opportunity to educate the public with a panel,
Yeah.
in addition to the film, it seems like we could find numerous sponsors to help with this because of,
Right.
just the need and the concerns that we have in our own community across the state, so.
Yeah.
Commissioner?
I'm still interested. I just asked about the cost because it would be great for all these sponsors. Many hands make light work, and many sponsors make light financial resources. So I do think there's an opportunity for even other
Sure.
organizations that are philanthropy focused that might be that we haven't reached out to, that we might want to approach, who are kind of watching this as well and are interested in specifically water education. So I'm hoping that, we can all work together. I think it's an important topic, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll keep you posted as we have new information or more information about the exact costs and sponsorships. But for now, we'll pencil in the date and keep working toward that. So,
Commissioners, if I might add, for the public listening, we would sponsor this because education is an important piece of our water plan. It is part of that goal and part of that overall effort. And so we don't typically sponsor movies or films or that sort of thing, but this is directly aligned with the water plan that you all have adopted.
thank you, Lorinda. I think I'm too deep into it to provide that broader context, so. All right. Another quick update. Next week, you'll be joining Wellington for a joint work session, and one of the topics is the IGA for coordinated planning. And so I think you all have had numerous conversations about that and gone through some of this type of effort with Timnath most recently. There will be a packet that goes out ahead of time to the trustees, and I'll make sure you also get a copy of that packet. We'll be focusing on what the process and schedule looks like to engage the community around the topic, and then highlighting what typically goes into these IGAs and how they work with the Growth Management Overlay District, and particular topics around annexation policy and so forth. The trustees will probably likely want to talk in greater detail about some of the topics, and so they may pull off and do their own separate work sessions to dive a little bit deeper in some of these topics. But if you have questions or want to coordinate around any of the topics beforehand, once you see the packet materials, feel free to reach out. Any other questions on that particular topic? Okay. All right. I had a couple, really quickly, there's some items that you're on the table for you. One are some additional public comments for your land use hearing this afternoon. There's one item on the agenda that's a short-term rental, and it's a discussion item, and they did receive some additional public comments through this morning, and so you have those additional public comments in front of you. And then my other updates are around the ranch. There's a couple other items there on the table for you. One is a question from Connor, and I'm bringing these all forward on his behalf. As they do various updates around Blue Arena and on the campus, he's wondering about the acknowledgement wall that currently exists on the south concourse. And that may be something that would need to move at some point in the near future. And he's wondering, should it all stay as one large piece the way it is? Is it okay if it is moved to another location? Is it okay if it's moved in different pieces as it moves? And what are your thoughts on that particular, the acknowledgement wall and the value of keeping it in a particular location or all intact? And I don't necessarily need a decision today. I just wanted to get it in front of you so you could start to think about it and give some feedback to Connor at the ranch. And I'm happy to take any thoughts, initial thoughts you have, and if you'd like us to come back and finalize the conversation, we can do that too.
Any initial thoughts? Commissioner Shadwick McNeely?
I think this tells a lot of history. I think it's craftsmanship, but I do understand maybe a lot of people don't even probably stand there because of the crowds. But I think if we're thinking about moving it, it would be great to still put it somewhere in an area of prominence. But I'm not sure right now anybody even recognizes where it's at. So if we're thinking about moving it, it would be great to maybe put it somewhere, even on the campus somewhere where it would have some maybe a better area for people to stop and look at it and understand there's a lot of history there. So I'm open to it. I'll just leave that there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Qualls, any thoughts?
Perhaps. Did you say why we need to move it, or why Connor is suggesting we move it?
It's really part of all of the kind of improvements and changes they're making within the Blue Arena and on the campus in general. This particular piece of it, I'm not sure when the timeline is or when it would need to be moved or why, but I can certainly get more information about that.
And this, forgive me, this is located where you go up the stairs on
On
the
the
south?
south concourse,
So it's right
yes.
there when folks.
Yeah.
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 I guess if I heard the Commissioner Shadwick McNally, if we need to move it, obviously we want to put it in a place where people can see it and appreciate it.
Yeah.
I don't know where that would be.
Yeah. And if I'm hearing you both, or maybe reading between the lines, it sounds like maybe keeping it intact as one item is of interest, or do you have preferences on that?
I guess it depends on,
Okay.
is it more of a challenge to try to keep it together? If it's, what is, if it's too much to try to keep it together, it needs, what I'm saying? I guess it depends where it would go or how it would need, and I guess would need more information, but certainly open to just preserving and the integrity or just the spirit of it all. So I guess it just, if it's going to have to be cut in 4 pieces, then that's different than 2 pieces, and I don't know. I think it's really also a nod to the craftsmanship and the history of the ranch. So I think any tinkering with it is going to probably make some folks uncomfortable. But I would love some more information to understand where, what, and then I would probably have more of a feel for direction. Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds good. And we can ask Connor to look at what the potential options would be around, if it's going to move, where might it go, and how might it be done.
Just one other consideration, as I look at this a little bit more carefully, it seems like there's a flow of the information. So if we cut it up, that might compartmentalize the message. So there seems to be some logic with keeping it intact to maintain that flow.
Thank you.
I'm all for doing whatever works best and is easiest. And I will say, I don't know the history of it. This is a pretty big piece. And I don't, I understand we want to acknowledge a lot of people. And if we did this at every building, we would run out of space. So I don't know how much, I mean, I think it is a beautiful piece, and also I feel like it could be condensed, and I may be, that may be sacrilege, and I may be like, people may say like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we would do that. But I think we can thank people in a maybe little more concise way, and I wouldn't mind looking at what that would look like.
Okay. Okay.
We'll see. Send the emails to
Yeah.
Kristen Stevens.
Thank you. I can take all that feedback back to Connor and ask him to come back with a little bit more information about what this might look like. So, thank you. In a similar vein, there are, as part of the work that's in keeping with the premium lounge improvements for the Blue Arena and some of the other work that's happening, there's a proposal to do some restaurant improvements. You have a picture of that there too. OVG is doing all of the work around this. They're contracting it and paying for the improvements. The work would start in the summer, and we wanted to bring this to you now just by way of information and see if you had any feedback, and just make sure that you are aware that this project is potentially moving forward in the next few months.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Where is this going to be? Because, I look at the wind.
In the restaurant, in the slam dunk, is that the right name?
Home run.
The grill.
The grill.
The home run, there
So-
we go, the home run grill.
So I see,
Wrong sports analogy.
yeah, so I see you kind of blocking a little bit of the windows. Is that what they're going to look like? It blocked kind of the view, or is this just?
That's not an image of the actual restaurant. That's just to give you a sense of the design kind of look and feel of it. So that's more of a kind of a template to give you a sense of the materials and the colors and the furnishings and that sort of thing.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you. Sorry, and maybe you said that. I'm multitasking today, so I
Yeah.
apologize. But thank you.
Yeah.
I hate to do anything to impede views with the
Yes,
view shed. Sorry.
understood. Yeah, no, and I don't think there would be any intention to do that because those views are phenomenal.
Otherwise, Commissioner, are you, okay. Commissioner Collins.
I do not have any input. I'm going to trust the judgment of the people involved in this project.
Okay.
Yeah, same. I'm not an interior decorator, but I would hang out here.
Yeah, well, there you
Got
go.
enough TVs to be able to follow the sports, so.
There you go. Thank you. And then we wanted to, from the ranch, also just let you know about some upcoming events that are community serving and interesting events that might that you might like to know about. And one is a Slam and Famine event next week that's happening on the 14th and 15th. And this is one where we've brought in an organization that's, actually, I can send you a link that they shared from the ranch, but it's helping to raise funds for hunger in children. And it's an event that we help to provide some reduced cost to host the event there. Along those lines, there's a Colorado Mission of Mercy that does 3 days of free dental care for dentists and hygienists that are there in September. And then we also have the Honor Flight, April 27th, 28th, and in September. And they bring in the Honor Guard from our campus. So I know that the folks at the ranch just wanted you to be aware of some of the events that we do that really, I think, benefit the community and that are kind of neat things where we've also shared our space and given them a reduced cost to do that. So those are a couple of the things coming up.
Commissioner Shannon McNally?
Leslie, could you email those dates?
I will.
I'm sorry
Yeah,
to throw
yeah.
that at you, but I'm just
Yeah,
not.
no worries.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, and then you can see if that might be something that's of interest to you on your calendar. And then the last item, just very quickly, I'm working on a list of folks to reach out to for stakeholder interviews for our ballot initiative work that we're doing for transportation. And I had hoped to bring that list to share with you today. I didn't get it quite done. So I think if it's okay, I'll email it to you. And I'd be very interested if they're community leaders, nonprofits, business organizations or folks who particularly are interested in transportation topics that we should be reaching out to. And we've got a fairly good list so far. We've done a lot of outreach with our community, city, town partners, managers, and elected officials, and we'll continue to do some of that work, with between staff and whatnot. But we also wanted to get our consultants out to interview other folks in the community that may be interested in this topic. So we'll share that with you and hope to see if you have any good suggestions for that, which I'm sure you will. Thank you.
Commissioner Shannon McNally.
Right off the top of my head, just for your information, I just wondering about, I know we have NOCO right chair, but that came out of Office on Aging, and there's still some nonprofits like Saint and Raft, and some of those
Yeah.
with Office on Aging who daily take folks to appointments and know some of the barriers and things for older adults and
Okay.
some of the challenges, may have some ideas. And I'm just, I know also, there was a group that was working on some, I forgot the name of the nonprofit, but maybe some of the people up in Wellington do that. We're working on trying to help with transportation needs from Wellington down to Fort Collins for medical appointments and stuff. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to kind of put that at the top of your list because they've been for over a decade trying to tackle these challenges for folks who need to get to appointments in other communities than where they live. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight that one. So that's, I'll look at the list and
Great.
think about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. So more to come on that. And that concludes my list of topics.
Nice.
Happy to answer any questions that you might have about anything that's happening in the various departments.
Any further questions for anyone? No? Okay. Well, just, I guess, I may see if Lorinda wants to say anything, but I would just like to thank the folks that would be, taking up some of the extra work while Rebecca will be gone. So
Oh, thank
just
you.
Eric, who's in the room, and it sounded like Amy and Jenny and you. And so I just really appreciate that. That's, I know that's not easy to do, but it's important to take care of one another, and I appreciate the extra work you'll have to do that. But it just goes to,
Yeah.
the compassion and the culture that we have here at the county, and so I'm very
Absolutely.
appreciative of that.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Lorinda, anything else to add?
I will say that Leslie and I have talked about going back to the team and seeing what is on that work plan that you all had a chance to look at and what might be delayed, maybe some couple of months or maybe even into next year. So I know you'll be taking that back to that leadership group just to make sure that we're not overloading the folks we have there, recognizing what they have on their plate, and really appreciative of you all coming together and really picking up and carrying forward for Rebecca while she's
Yeah.
away. Thanks.
Thank you for that, too. And that is something that the leadership team in community development is working on also. So we
Yeah, that's
may
great.
bring that back to you just to make sure that you're aware of which things might need to be on a little bit of a slower track and how we can progress on the other items in this period. So,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
we're happy to, to look at the list and help identify things, and you can too, just because as people will be doing more work, we don't want people to feel overwhelmed and overloaded, especially with work that can wait. It's,
Yeah,
not
thank you.
everything is crucial to be done in the next 60 seconds, right? All right. It seems like we've finished our agenda here, and so let's see what time it is. It is 2:23. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.